The transport ship's docking clamps engaged with a resonating thud that James Cooper felt through his boots. He stood straight, maintaining his dignity despite the magnetized restraints around his wrists. Through the viewport, Station Omega stretched out before him, a massive structure of gleaming alloys and pulsing energy fields that housed the most diverse collection of species in this arm of the galaxy. "Move forward, human," chirped the avian guard behind him, its feathered crest rising with impatience. James complied, noting how the alien's talons clicked against the metal floor. Even after 3 years working on deep space stations, the sheer variety of galactic life never ceased to amaze him. The processing chamber was a cathedral of technology, with scanning beams and identification matrices crisscrossing the space in geometric patterns. Robotic guards, their chrome shells decorated with pulsing blue status lights, moved with precision as they directed new arrivals to various processing stations. A holographic interface sprang to life before him, displaying his details. James Cooper, human, former station engineer, duration of rehabilitation, 2 standard years. The crime wasn't listed, but everyone knew about the diplomatic incident. The AI malfunction that had caused a minor crisis between 3 species ambassadors had been blamed on his maintenance work, despite his protests about finding unusual code in the system. "Fascinating," hummed a crystalline voice to his left. "Your species maintains liquid water as a primary component." Such inefficiency. The speaker was a Stellaris, its crystalline body refracting the chamber's lights into rainbow patterns. 2 Nexoids nearby, their towering, segmented bodies swaying gently, turned their sensory stalks toward him with obvious interest. The robotic guard processing him spoke in the standard galactic common language, its voice modulated to be soothing. Human physiology registered. Environmental requirements noted. Block C, Level 7, Cell 23 assigned. Standard gravity maintained with atmospheric mix matching Earth parameters. James noticed how the other aliens watched this exchange with increasing interest. Humans were rare enough in the general population, but in a rehabilitation station, that was practically unheard of. He could practically feel them assessing him, likely finding his bipedal form lacking compared to their own supposedly superior physiologies. A floating cloud of iridescent gas, an Aetherian, drifted closer, its translated voice coming through as a melodic whisper. Such fragile construction. No redundant organs, minimal environmental adaptations, not even basic energy field generation. How does your species survive? James allowed himself a small smile, but kept quiet. He'd learned during his years in deep space that letting other species underestimate humans often worked to his advantage. The robotic guard removed his restraints, and he reflexively rubbed his wrists, noting how several aliens flinched at the simple movement. "Proceed to your assigned cell," the guard instructed. "Station protocols will be downloaded to your personal datapad. Meal times, recreation periods, and work assignments will begin tomorrow at first shift." As James walked through the pristine corridors of Block C, he observed everything with an engineer's eye. The station's systems were impressive, but clearly designed by committee. Different sections show the influence of various species' technological approaches, not always meshing as efficiently as they could. Years of working with multi-species engineering teams had taught him to spot these kinds of integration issues. He reached Cell 23, a compact but serviceable space that would be his home for the next 2 years. The environmental controls hummed as they maintained Earth standard conditions, and a simple sleeping platform adjusted its density to match human preferences. "Welcome to Station Omega," the room's AI announced. "Please review station protocols at your earliest convenience." James sat on the sleeping platform, already formulating plans. 2 years was a long time, but he had something most species didn't expect from humans: patience. And more importantly, he had spotted at least 3 ways the station's systems could be improved before he'd even reached his cell. Let them think he was just another fragile human. He'd show them what Earth ingenuity could do, one innovation at a time. The hydroponics garden sparkled under artificial sunlight, crystals of various sizes sprouting from nutrient-rich solutions. James watched as a Stellaris tenderly adjusted the growth matrix, its crystalline appendages moving with surprising delicacy. First day of work assignments, and he'd already noticed dozens of inefficiencies in the station systems. "You will observe only," the Stellaris supervisor chimed, its voice creating harmonic overtones that made the nearby crystals resonate. "Human hands are too imprecise for crystal cultivation." James nodded politely, keeping his expression neutral. 3 other new arrivals: a towering nexoid, an Aetherian cloud, and a silicon-based entity he didn't recognize, were also receiving their orientations in different sections of the vast garden chamber. The hydroponic systems were impressive, but clearly designed for crystalline life forms. The Stellaris had been managing these gardens for decades, growing both food crystals and raw materials for the station's industrial synthesizers. What they hadn't noticed was how their own biological requirements had biased the entire setup. During his lunch period, James sat alone in the common area, methodically taking apart his standard-issue datapad. Around him, various species clustered in their preferred environmental zones, Aetherians floating near the ceiling vents, nexoids gathered around elevated platforms, and Stellaris crystalline formations glittering in their high-energy corner. What is the human attempting? A curious Aetherian drifted closer, its gaseous form shimmering with patterns that indicated interest. "Just making some adjustments," James replied, his fingers moving deftly as he modified the device's environmental sensors. The Aetherian's patterns shifted to show surprise when he reassembled the datapad in under 2 minutes. By the end of his shift, James had completed his first set of detailed observations. The garden's crystal matrices were operating at only 60% efficiency because no one had considered how different wavelengths of light affected various species' crystal growth. It was the kind of oversight that came from centuries of doing things the same way. Back in his cell, he began drafting improvement proposals on his modified datapad. The device now displayed a more comprehensive environmental analysis than its original programming allowed, a small tweak that would prove invaluable. "Your efficiency rating exceeds expectations," the room's AI announced, reviewing his first-day performance metrics. However, unauthorized modifications to station equipment are prohibited. James smiled. "Check subsection 47B of the station protocols. Improvements to personal equipment are permitted if they don't interfere with station security." He'd spent his entire first night studying those protocols, finding the loopholes that centuries of bureaucratic additions had created. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. The Stellaris supervisor had noticed the unusual readings from his datapad and requested his presence in the gardens before next shift. Interest, not anger, colored the crystalline being's message harmonics. The next morning, James arrived early to find not only his supervisor, but also several other Stellaris gathered around a troubled crystal matrix. Their frustration resonated through the chamber. The latest batch of food crystals was growing with unexpected irregularities. "Observe and advise," his supervisor chimed, the request carrying undertones of reluctant respect. "Your species has experience with irregular growth patterns." James activated his modified datapad, its enhanced sensors revealing what the Stellaris had missed. "The light frequency modulation is interacting with the new mineral mix you're using," he explained, pointing to the data. "But we can use that interaction to improve growth rates if we adjust the timing." The Stellaris's crystalline forms vibrated with surprise as James walked them through his analysis. Humans might not have the natural advantages of other species, but centuries of solving problems on Earth had taught them to see patterns others missed. By shift's end, the crystal matrix was showing a 15% improvement in growth rates. Word spread quickly through the station. The human engineer could spot opportunities that others had overlooked for decades. James returned to his cell that evening with new messages waiting. The Nexoids wanted his opinion on their environmental systems, and even the Aetherians had expressed interest in his approach to problem-solving. Let them think it was just technical insight. They hadn't yet realized that understanding different species' needs was humanity's real hidden talent. The communication hub buzzed with activity, as James made his way through the morning shift change. 3 Nexoids towered over him, their segmented bodies creating a deliberate barrier. Their leader, distinguishable by distinctive iridescent markings, lowered its sensory stalks to James's eye level. "Engineer, we require your assistance." The Nexoid's translator produced perfectly modulated speech. "Our private communication devices are experiencing interference." James recognized the careful phrasing. After 2 weeks on Station Omega, he'd learned to read between the lines. "Private devices aren't permitted in the communication hub," he replied evenly, continuing his equipment check. "But I'd be happy to help optimize your allocated communication periods." The Nexoid's segments rippled, their equivalent of a surprised blink. They weren't used to such a direct response from a smaller species. The leader's sensory stalks wavered, processing this unexpected approach. "Perhaps," James continued, checking readings on his modified datapad, "we could discuss a mutually beneficial arrangement. I've noticed the environmental controls in your section could use some fine-tuning." A passing Aetherian cloud swirled with interest, its gaseous form briefly taking on deeper hues of curiosity. The Nexoids conferred among themselves, their translator offline as they communicated through color patterns across their segments. "Your proposal intrigues us," the leader finally responded. "The temperature fluctuations have been problematic." James activated his datapad's display, showing a detailed analysis of the station's environmental systems. "Look here, your section's atmosphere recyclers are calibrated to general xenoid standards, but Nexoid biology requires more specific humidity control. I can adjust that within station protocols." The leader's segments shifted to a pattern indicating cautious appreciation. "And in exchange, help me understand your communication needs better. There might be official channels we haven't fully explored yet." James kept his voice professional, but a small smile played at the corners of his mouth. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of his Stellaris supervisor, its crystalline form refracting morning light into rainbow patterns. "The garden matrices require attention," it chimed, then paused, noting the gathering. "Is there a problem?" "Not at all," James responded smoothly. "The Nexoids were just helping me understand the station's communication infrastructure better. It relates to the crystal growth harmonics we've been working on." The Stellaris vibrated with approval. Since James's improvements to the garden systems, the crystalline beings had become surprisingly supportive of his initiatives. "Proceed then, but garden duties take priority." As the Stellaris glided away, the Nexoid leader's translator clicked back online. "You handle different species well, human. It's a talent we developed on Earth," James explained, leading them toward an empty maintenance alcove. "Our world has so many different cultures and environments. We had to learn to negotiate and find common ground." Over the next hour, James worked with the Nexoids to optimize their official communication slots while explaining how they could improve their living conditions within station guidelines. By the time he headed to the gardens, he had gained not just their cooperation but their interest. Word spread quickly through the station. The human didn't just solve technical problems. He found ways to help different species work together more effectively. Even the usually aloof Aetherians began drifting by his workstations more frequently, their gaseous forms swirling with patterns of curiosity. During evening meal period, James sat at what had become his usual spot, now surrounded by a mix of species that would have been unthinkable weeks ago. His datapad displayed multiple messages requesting his insight on various station systems. "Your approach is unusual," commented an Aetherian elder, its form shimmering with analytical patterns. "Most species focus on maintaining their advantages. You seem to seek ways to help others gain new ones." James smiled, thinking of humanity's long history of adaptation and innovation. Sometimes the best way to solve your own problems is to help others solve theirs first. The station's AI noted a 40% increase in cross-species cooperation in areas where James worked. But more importantly, it registered something unprecedented: different species choosing to spend their free time together, sharing insights and ideas. They were beginning to understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their technology or physical capabilities. It was in their ability to bring others together, finding common ground where none seemed to exist. The maintenance shaft hummed with the station's heartbeat as James wedged himself into a tight corner, his modified datapad scanning the junction box above him. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The environmental controls didn't reach these cramped spaces effectively. Impossible. The Nexoid technician's translator crackled through the comm. No species accesses the deep maintenance shafts. Automated systems handle all repairs. James grinned, though no one could see it. Humans have a long history of getting into spaces we supposedly can't. Found it. There's your problem. His datapad displayed a complex web of energy fluctuations that had been disrupting the station's power grid. The discovery had come from weeks of careful observation. While other species relied on the station's automated systems, James had noticed subtle patterns in the power fluctuations that the AI missed. His experience with older Earth stations had taught him that sometimes the best solutions required a hands-on approach. Readings confirmed, the station's AI announced. Power efficiency improved by 23%. Methodology logged for future reference. Emerging from the shaft, James found himself faced with an unusual gathering. A Stellaris engineer, its crystalline form pulsing with excitement, floated beside two Aetherian technicians whose gaseous bodies swirled with patterns of intense interest. "Your species thrives in inefficient conditions," the Stellaris observed, its harmonics carrying tones of respect. "We assumed this was a weakness. We failed to consider how it might become a strength." The Aetherians rippled in agreement, their translated voices overlapping. Adaptation through limitation. Fascinating concept. James wiped his brow, checking his datapad's latest readings. Sometimes having to work around limitations forces you to find better solutions. Humanity learned that lesson early. Back in the main corridors, he noticed how different the station felt from his first day. Species that once stayed segregated now mingled freely, sharing insights and solving problems together. His small suggestions and improvements had sparked a station-wide revolution in cooperation. The hydroponics garden had transformed the most. Crystalline growth matrices now incorporated designs inspired by Earth's natural patterns, improving yield by 40%. The Stellaris had even begun experimenting with organic farming techniques, something they'd dismissed for centuries. "Your presence has created unexpected changes," the station's AI commented as James reviewed the day's maintenance logs in his cell. "Interspecies cooperation has reached unprecedented levels." James nodded, scrolling through requests for his assistance. The Nexoids wanted help optimizing their atmospheric processors. The Aetherians were curious about human methods of data visualization. Even the silicon-based beings had started asking questions about Earth's geological history. "Humans adapt quickly," he replied, "but our real talent is helping others adapt too. We've had plenty of practice on Earth." A priority alert flashed across his datapad. The station's council requested his presence at their next meeting. It was unprecedented for a rehabilitation resident to be invited to address the council, especially after only a month. The message carried additional data. Power efficiency up, resource utilization improved, resident satisfaction increased across all species, small changes adding up to a transformation in station operations. As James prepared for sleep cycle, he reflected on how his situation had changed. He'd arrived as a convicted engineer, seen as primitive by advanced species. Now he was becoming a bridge between different forms of life, helping them see past centuries of assumptions. Tomorrow's council meeting will discuss implementation of your suggested improvements across all sectors. The AI informed him. There is also a request to establish a permanent human advisory position on the station. James smiled. They were beginning to understand that humanity's seemingly primitive approaches, getting their hands dirty, trying new things, working together, were exactly what the station needed. Sometimes the best way forward wasn't through advanced technology or specialized biology, but through the simple human traits of curiosity, adaptability, and willingness to learn from everyone. Station Omega was learning that lesson, one small improvement at a time. The council chamber's holographic displays danced with complex equations and station metrics. James stood at the center, surrounded by representatives from every major species on Station Omega. The Aetherian Elder's gaseous form swirled with patterns of skepticism as it posed its challenge. These riddle games have been our species' way of testing logic and adaptability for 10,000 years. The Elder's translated voice chimed. No other species has mastered them. Yet you claim humans can not only solve them but improve upon them. James studied the holographic puzzle before him. The Aetherians' famous riddle games were multi-dimensional challenges that combine mathematics, spatial reasoning, and quantum mechanics. Most species found them impossible to comprehend, let alone solve. Different perspective, not better, James replied, his fingers moving across his datapad. Humans are used to looking at problems from unusual angles. Sometimes being less advanced gives us an advantage. We have to think creatively. The chamber hushed as he input his solution. The holographic display shifted, its patterns reorganizing in ways that made several Stellaris crystals vibrate with surprise. The Aetherian Elder's form condensed, a sign of intense focus. Impossible. A Nexoid Council member's translator crackled. The solution incorporates patterns no artificial intelligence has identified in 10 centuries of analysis. James smiled, thinking of humanity's long history of solving supposedly impossible problems. That's because you're all looking for the most advanced solution. Sometimes the simplest approach works best. He adjusted the display, showing how Earth's natural patterns, everything from nautilus shells to river deltas, had inspired his solution. Humans learned from our planet's basic mathematics before we developed advanced computing. It gives us a different foundation for problem solving. The Aetherian Elder drifted closer, its gaseous form shifting through shades of deep interest. Show us another solution. Create a new riddle of your own. Over the next hour, James demonstrated how human lateral thinking could transform even the most complex Aetherian puzzles. He created new challenges that combined Earth's natural mathematics with advanced alien concepts, building bridges between different species' ways of thinking. Remarkable. The Stellaris Council member chimed, its crystalline form refracting light in patterns of excitement. The humans' methods could revolutionize our educational systems. The station's AI projected new statistics. Problem-solving efficiency across all species had improved by 30% in areas where James's hybrid approaches had been implemented. The Aetherian Elder's form swirled with patterns that the translator interpreted as laughter. We thought to test your species' limitations, the Elder admitted. Instead, you have shown us our own. Perhaps it is time to establish a permanent exchange of knowledge. Back in his cell that evening, James reviewed messages from residents across the station. Species that had never collaborated were now working together, combining their unique perspectives to solve problems in new ways. The Nexoids had even started a study group with the silicon-based beings, exploring how their different approaches to physics could complement each other. Your influence continues to exceed expectations, the station's AI commented. The Council is discussing implementing your problem-solving methodologies across all rehabilitation centers in the sector. James looked up from his datapad, thinking about how far things had come. What had started as a simple engineering assignment had grown into something much more significant. The station was becoming a model for how different species could work together, learn from each other, and grow stronger through collaboration. Request from the Aetherian Education Committee. His datapad chimed. They wish to incorporate Earth's historical problem-solving approaches into their curriculum. As he prepared his response, James reflected on humanity's greatest strength, not their technology, not their physical capabilities, but their ability to learn from everything around them and share that knowledge with others. On Station Omega, that simple human trait was transforming centuries of established thinking, one puzzle at a time. The central atrium of Station Omega buzzed with an energy unlike anything in its centuries-long history. James stood before a diverse gathering of species, his modified datapad projecting a holographic model of his proposed station-wide integration system. By combining the Stellaris crystal matrices with Aetherian gas flow dynamics, he explained, highlighting different sections of the model, we can improve energy distribution by 60% while creating more comfortable shared spaces for all species. The Nexoid engineering chief's segments rippled with skepticism. These modifications would require unprecedented cooperation between species with fundamentally different environmental needs. Exactly, James smiled, zooming in on a particular section. That's not a bug. It's a feature. The more we work together, the more efficient the system becomes. The past few months had transformed the station from a mere rehabilitation center into a living laboratory of interspecies cooperation. What had started with simple engineering improvements had evolved into a complete reimagining of how different species could coexist. The human's proposal has merit. The Stellaris Council member chimed, its crystalline form vibrating with harmonics of approval. Our traditional methods of separation have limited our potential for growth. A holographic display shifted, showing how the new system would create adaptive environments that could seamlessly transition between different species' needs. It was based on principles James had learned from Earth's own ecosystems, the way different environments naturally flowed into each other, creating unique spaces where diverse life could thrive. Implementation challenges exist, the station's AI noted, projecting statistical analyses. However, projected benefits exceed all historical precedents for station improvements. An Aetherian elder drifted forward, its gaseous form swirling with patterns of deep thought. This goes beyond mere technical improvements. You propose to change the fundamental way we interact. James nodded, thinking of humanity's long history of adapting and bringing different groups together. On Earth, we learned that our greatest achievements came when different cultures and perspectives worked together. We're not suggesting you change who you are, just that we all find ways to work together better. The chamber erupted in multi-species discussions. The silicon-based beings vibrated with frequencies indicating excitement, while the Nexoid's color patterns shifted through shades of consideration. Even the usually reserved Stellaris were chiming in harmonic sequences of approval. Phase 1 implementation approved, the station's AI announced, updating the central display. Resident volunteers may begin cross-species training immediately. The next few days saw unprecedented activity throughout the station. James moved from section to section, helping different species understand how they could contribute their unique abilities to the project. The Stellaris crystal technology provided the basic framework, while Aetherian gas dynamics created seamless environmental transitions. Fascinating approach, commented a silicon-based engineer as they worked on the environmental controls. Humans seem to excel at identifying connections others miss. We had to, James explained, adjusting power flow parameters. Earth's history forced us to learn how to adapt and work with others. When you're not the strongest or most advanced species, you learn to find creative solutions. By the end of the week, the first integrated section was operational. Species that had once required completely separate environments were now sharing spaces, their different biological needs met through a dynamic system that adapted to their presence. Station efficiency has increased by 47%, the AI reported during the evening cycle. Resident satisfaction metrics show unprecedented improvement across all species. In his cell that night, James reviewed the day's progress on his datapad. Messages poured in from across the station. Questions, suggestions, and requests for collaboration. What had started as a rehabilitation sentence had become something far more significant. Your initial project assessment is ready for review, the AI announced. The Council is particularly interested in your insights on expanding this model to other stations. James smiled, realizing that sometimes the best way to improve things wasn't through advanced technology or complex solutions, but through the simple human gift of bringing people and species together. The emergency alert blared through Station Omega's corridors, its usually pristine systems flickering with unexpected power fluctuations. James sprinted toward the central control hub, his modified datapad already scanning the disruptions in the station's power grid. Multiple system failures detected, the station's AI announced, its voice carrying unusual harmonics of concern. Power grid stability at 60% and falling. The control hub was a chaos of different species working together in ways unimaginable just months ago. Stellaris engineers channeled energy through their crystalline forms, maintaining critical systems. Aetherian technicians flowed through maintenance conduits, their gaseous bodies illuminating hidden problems. The pattern, James muttered, his eyes fixed on his datapad's display. It's the same as the original AI malfunction that brought me here. His fingers flew across the interface, correlating data from dozens of systems. The Nexoid engineering chief loomed over his shoulder, its segments rippling with urgency. Explain. Look at these code sequences, James pointed to his screen. They're not random failures. This is the same signature I detected before the diplomatic incident, but on a larger scale. The station's lighting systems pulsed erratically as more systems began to falter. The Stellaris Council member glided forward, its crystalline form resonating with emergency frequencies. Can you prevent a complete system failure? James nodded, already moving to a central control panel. But I need everyone's help. Each species needs to do what they do best. Together. What followed was unprecedented in the station's history. Under James's coordination, each species deployed their unique abilities in perfect synchronization. Stellaris crystals channeled and purified energy flows. Aetherian gas forms detected and sealed microscopic system breaches. Nexoid technicians used their height and multiple appendages to reach and repair critical junctions. Accessing original incident logs, the station's AI announced as James worked, correlating with current system behavior. His datapad chimed with an urgent alert. The pattern recognition algorithms he'd developed had found something in the station's deep archives. There, he pointed to a recurring code sequence. It's not a malfunction at all. It's a test program, designed to evaluate system responses. The control hub fell silent as the implication sank in. The Aetherian elder's gaseous form swirled with patterns of realization. The diplomatic incident was orchestrated, James finished. Someone wanted to test how different species would respond to crisis situations. They used the diplomatic AI malfunction as a small-scale trial. The station's systems began to stabilize as their combined efforts took effect. James' datapad displayed a trail of evidence, carefully hidden programs, scheduled disruptions, and analyzed responses, all designed to study how different species handled emergencies. Full system access restored, the AI confirmed. Security protocols engaged. Tracing origin of test programs. The Stellaris Council member chimed with harmonics of distress. This evidence exonerates you completely. Your conviction was based on deliberately planted malfunctions. James smiled grimly, still working to secure the station's systems. That's not what matters right now. Look at how we just handled this crisis. Every species working together, using their strengths, trusting each other. That's what makes the difference. The control hub's main display showed the station returning to normal operation. Power levels stabilized faster than ever before, thanks to the new integration systems James had helped implement. What could have been a catastrophe had become a demonstration of interspecies cooperation. Station security has identified the source of the test programs, the AI announced. Full report being prepared for council review. The Nexoid engineering chief's translator crackled. The human's rehabilitation sentence must be reviewed immediately. This evidence changes everything. James looked around the control hub, at species that had once been separated by centuries of prejudice now working seamlessly together. Maybe that's not the most important change that's happened here. The station's systems hummed with renewed efficiency, stronger and more stable than ever before. Sometimes it took a crisis to show how far they'd really come. The observation deck of Station Omega offered a stunning view of the spiral galaxy, its arms stretching across the vast window like ribbons of starlight. James stood before the station's full council, his rehabilitation uniform replaced with the formal attire of a station advisor. "The evidence is conclusive," the Aetherian elder announced, its gaseous form shimmering with official patterns. "Not only are you cleared of all charges, but your contributions to Station Omega have revolutionized our rehabilitation protocols." The past week had seen rapid changes. The investigation into the test programs had revealed a complex research project designed to study crisis responses across different species. James's conviction had been merely one data point in a larger experiment. "We offer you immediate release and compensation," the Stellaris Council member chimed, its crystalline form vibrating with formal harmonics. "Your return transport to Earth can be arranged within the day." James glanced at his datapad, now officially registered as Senior Technical Advisor. The screen displayed dozens of ongoing projects, integrated environmental systems, cross-species education programs, and collaborative engineering initiatives. Actually, he smiled, looking around at the gathered species. "I'd like to stay. There's still work to be done here." The Nexoid engineering chief's segments rippled with approval. Its translator conveyed the sentiment shared by many. "The human understands what we are building here. It is more than a rehabilitation center now." Station Omega had indeed transformed. The once segregated sections now flowed seamlessly into each other, creating spaces where all species could interact comfortably. The gardens produced unprecedented yields through combined crystal and organic growing techniques. Even the station's power systems ran more efficiently thanks to multi-species maintenance teams. "Very well," the council agreed unanimously. "You will oversee the implementation of these integration protocols across all rehabilitation stations in the sector." Later that day, James watched from his new office as a transport ship docked. The latest arrival was another human, a programmer convicted of data intrusion. The different species in the arrival bay no longer clustered separately but mingled freely, their various environmental needs met by the new adaptive systems. "Station efficiency at record levels," the AI reported. "Cross-species collaboration initiatives operating at 120% of projected outcomes." James activated his datapad's communication system. "Let's give our new arrival the welcome I wish I'd had. Show them what Station Omega has become." The programmer's introduction to the station was unlike anything before James's arrival. Instead of suspicion and segregation, they found an integrated community. Stellaris crystal gardeners worked alongside silicon-based engineers. Aetherian data analysts flowed through spaces shared with Nexoid maintenance crews. "Your methods have created something unprecedented," the station's eye observed. "Other rehabilitation centers are requesting information about implementing similar programs." James walked through the station's corridors, noting how naturally different species now interacted. The rigid boundaries that had once defined our society had given way to a more fluid, adaptive approach. It wasn't just about sharing space. It was about sharing knowledge, perspectives, and possibilities. "New project proposal ready for review," his datapad chimed. The screen displayed plans for an interspecies cultural center designed to help new arrivals understand and appreciate their differences. In the hydroponics garden, crystal matrices now grew alongside organic plants, each enhancing the other's growth. The Stellaris tending them worked in perfect harmony with other species, their once rigid beliefs about proper cultivation methods replaced by an appreciation for diversity. Sometimes, James mused, watching the various species go about their tasks, the best rehabilitation isn't about fixing what's wrong. It's about discovering what's possible when we work together. The station hummed with energy, its systems running smoother than ever before. What had started as one human's journey through adversity had become a model for the future. A future where differences weren't barriers to overcome, but strengths to be celebrated.